So Kevin Warren also addressed the media rights in regards to the connection to the playoff. And I really didn't come to this conclusion last year when the playoff proposal was, um, hit a challenge and was put down by the other conferences, and the SEC was not too happy about that. But that the media rights that they are not looking for an exclusive TV rights deal, meaning ESPN dominating the next stretch of college football playoffs, and they want to see a distribution, something close to what the NFL does, where you see various playoff games on different networks and the championship game rotated in some way. All right.
Well, I'll take that if nobody else wants to. Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons the Big Ten and the ACC kind of slowed things down, is because if they would have been negotiating for the playoff package, you're just negotiating with ESPN. So I like the fact that you're talking about spreading these out. Kevin Warren coming out and saying he's going to soften his stance on automatic qualifiers. I wonder how much that has to do with the fact that with the Big Ten being a larger conference now and perhaps expanding even more, automatic qualifiers don't really do that much, and they may actually be holding a Big Ten team out of the playoffs, with somebody else like a Pac-12 automatic qualifier perhaps holding a Big Ten third team out of the playoffs. So, of course, he's no longer interested in that. This 16-team thing that we keep hearing more and more about is interesting to me, where maybe you eliminate the conference championships altogether, and that allows you to play a 16-team playoff as you would a 12-team playoff with a first round, second round on campuses. So I think there's some just hearing about the 16-team playoff kind of out of nowhere caught me a little bit off guard, and I think maybe we might want to pay a little bit of attention to that, especially if Kevin Warren is now saying, yeah, winning a conference championship as an automatic qualifier isn't such a big deal to me anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of dollars there that you can play with. And, I was reading something from one of the expansion guys out there on social media this morning about we could see things going in another direction. We could see not only a conference championship game, we could see semifinal games in the conference, and that you could push everything through that way. And how does that fit into the structure, and how does that work? I mean, they know that they have a printing press, that they can just print money, and it's just going to be a matter of finding out a way that they can get every last drop of it out of there. I mean, players are getting compensated. If players start to suddenly see profit sharing or revenue split from these deals or whatever, suddenly I don't think it's going to be as much of a case of, well, maybe we're overtaxing these guys. The only place they're going to be getting overtaxed is from the federal government. When it comes to the universities, they're going to be like, well, now welcome to the party, pal, and we're going to sit there and you might be seeing a 16-game season or something when you wrap everything together, or whatever it may end up being. So, I think with every passing day, we realize the more we learn, the less we know, is where we stand.
I'm back. My train went through, and I think about so many changes that are going to happen. And the other leagues, when the SEC grabbed up Texas and Oklahoma, they hit the pause button on the playoff. And they're like, whoa, what does this mean? Do we really want to go to 8 teams so that these guys can have 3? Whoa, hold on. And what's interesting, I put up my consensus poll the other day, and the way the votes shook out, you think Clemson is considered one of the top 4, but I think there was some uncertainty with Clemson in the eyes of some of these top 25s that I put in there from different sites and magazines. And when I mashed all these numbers together, it was Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, and Texas A&M was 4. So, and that would never happen in real life, because you just don't suppose that would happen. But, 2 of those teams would be guaranteed losses, if not all 3 of them from the SEC. So, I don't know. It's interesting, but now that the Big Ten has struck out on its own and added 2 teams to get to 16. Now you've got Gene Smith out here talking about a 16-team playoff. And the immediate reaction from people was, you're only sold out right now for your Notre Dame and your Michigan games. Good luck selling tickets to any game once you have a 16-team playoff, because there's not one single game on that schedule that you would say is do or die at some point that's going to knock you out of the play, other than the Michigan game, which is always, a sellout game anyway. But any game up till that point really is not going to be the end-all be-all. You don't have to win the Big Ten now to get in the playoff or to guarantee yourself of a playoff spot. So I don't know. We are in for a world of change, and I don't know what's going to solve it. Just kind of dream weaving. Kevin and I were talking about in Indianapolis at lunch about how they could play 10 conference games as going up from 9, but then you would have a lot of years where some of these schools would only have 6 home games. And now you're giving back, for Ohio State's standpoint, a $10 or $15 million windfall of, not playing Alabama A&M, or whoever, or in this case, Toledo or Arkansas State, because you've got to have a 5th Big Ten road game that year or whatever. And so there's going to be a lot of push-pull on this. If it's part of the 12-game season, is the 11th game going to become the Michigan game? The 12th game would become the Final Four of the Big Ten. And as we saw in the COVID year, the schools that didn't make the championship game got to play another game, basically a lame duck game, where maybe 5 plays 6 or 7 plays 8 and so on. And, how do you slot those games after that? And and then the winners of the 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3 games play on the neutral field for the conference championship. We are in for a ton of change, and whatever we have accepted for college football over the years is about to change in very dramatic fashion. The Rose Bowl, what's going to happen? Are the Big Ten and the Pac-12 still on talking terms to even have a partnership with the Rose Bowl? That's a huge question. After the next 2 years, you figure they'll play out the string these next 2 years with the current New Year's 6 college football playoff format. But after that, when it goes to an 8 or even a 16-team playoff, how do the bowls fit into that playoff? Are they used as quarterfinal games, semifinal games? They've kind of taken the championship game away from the major bowls. They've had it a couple of years. Their cities have had it. They're having it in Los Angeles this year, but not at the Rose Bowl, of all places. So whatever. We are in for whatever passed for college football in the past is going to look dramatically different, I think, in the next 4 or 5 years.
Well, you talk about the Alabama A&M game and you not being able to sell tickets. I mean, we've already seen what happens with that Alabama A&M game or Culinary Institute of America or Ringling Brothers Clown College. I mean, those games don't move anyway, and you kind of are stuck with where you are, and it's just going to be a matter of where the dollars are coming from. And ultimately, the people that might end up getting caught in the wash there are the local businesses that count on the economic impact of the game, because the school's going to get theirs, and the school's going to need their money even more because they're going to be competing against athletes directly who are getting NIL money. They're only, in my opinion, it's truly just a finite amount of dollars that are out there that are going to get donated somewhere. And if the money's going to the foundations or the money's going to the athletes through these deals, the university's got to get theirs when they can. So I think that's the reason why we're seeing some more aggressiveness out of the conferences and the schools in terms of trying to make sure that they keep their cash flow operational.
I think one other thing, if the Big Ten and the SEC future components, right now 32 schools between those 2 leagues, and then whatever else we want to consider at that power 3, 4, 5 level, how that's all going to shake out, I think they'd be paying the players now if they could. Although Barry Alvarez again came back and said, we can't possibly pay everybody in all these sports, that it just isn't going to work out, at least under their current revenue streams. I don't know. I think that's a bunch of malarkey. You need a $14 million head football coach like you need a hole in the head. But I think that if they could break away, they would. But the issue is, how do you then schedule non-conference against Cincinnati? Well, Cincinnati will be in the Big 12. Toledo, Temple, those mid-major football schools who aren't paying their players. There'll be a tremendous difference. The MAC won't be able to pay anybody. That type of school, it widens the gap, which we already knew there's a huge gap anyway. And then the other thing is the NCAA basketball tournament, where they're all kind of joined at the hip on that, although basketball is like 1/20th of the overall thought process in this whole thing. I mean, Kevin Warren jumped at this deal without the first thought that he's going to send the Rutgers lacrosse team to USC. I mean, that thought never even crossed his mind in this entire thing. He was, more concerned about education, as we heard him, ramble on there for about 45 minutes. So, missing class time, not a problem, guys, and what they don't talk about is, a lot of virtual classes now. They could take those flights while they're on the plane, the 8-hour flight, to and from.